In the past comment, I was asked about injuries and how to deal with them, or how do I work around them and stuff like that. Um, so when it comes to injuries in general, so I don't really get, I would say, that many injuries. I might get like some tweaks or some aches here and there, but I've never gotten an injury to where like I had to stop training. Now, when at least not for the past, well, most of the time actually, no, yeah. So like sometimes when I'm doing like heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, my back will be in pretty bad shape. So it would kind of make me try and be a lot more lighter when it comes to some of my other movements. And it would also kind of affect like me doing push-ups or me doing pull-ups because your lower back is like used a lot in those movements as well. So with that, I would just kind of like increase rest time. So I would just try and take it easy. I wouldn't push myself too hard in the workouts that are affected by that injury. And when it comes to like other injuries and stuff like that, sometimes I will kind of get like a weird tweak in my shoulder and my wrist, maybe in my hips, stuff like that. And I just try and find the cause. Like, am I overdoing something? Am I doing a movement too much? So usually a lot of those things kind of lead to me doing a movement too much. So an example would be like tendonitis, right? So if I'm just doing pull-ups and just pull-ups, I'm not doing like any other variation of pull-ups, or I'm not, doing chin-ups or rows, stuff like that, I'm more likely to get tendonitis because I'm overusing those joints. And what's best to do in that situation is to switch up your variation, right? Same thing can happen with your pushing movements. Switch up the variation, switch up your hand placement. Maybe try and isolate the muscles to work around that injury if like the pain is too much. And when you warm up, make sure you're getting blood to those joints. When I warm up, I like to warm with a resistance band, and I'll do like a bunch of like curls and tricep push downs with the resistance band. I'll also do like external rotations, internal rotations, face pulls and whatnot, flies, stuff like that with the resistance band, and this helps like get blood flowing to my shoulders, to the joints, stuff like that. I make sure I do stretching when I wake up in the morning. I try to stretch throughout the day. I try to stretch even when I'm at school, just so it's like just in general your body can be like warmed up for anything. And this allows me to like do hit relatively the same movements over and over every single day, right? I do full body every day. I do a pulling, pushing, leg exercise, and then I'll throw in a core exercise here and there, right? And with me doing that every day, it's imperative that I make sure I'm injury free and that I'm not going too hard. One thing too is like some people when they train they can't control themselves, and they train way too hard, and it makes them kind of have to set back because they're just going way too hard, way too heavy, way too intense, and their body isn't ready for it. Like either they didn't warm up properly, the type of exercise that they're doing is too hard on their body. Like they're not ready for it in general yet. Um, Stuff like that, or overuse, right? So it's very important to just make sure you prioritize those things, and you look at like what can cause you injuries and what can't, and what you're safe to do. It's also important to listen to your body, right? When I have like some type of weird thing in my shoulder, I try and see what's the root cause so I can like cure that basically. And if I'm getting pain, when I'm doing push-ups, dips, whatever, I don't try and push through it. I would say I would try and stop, or I would try and just decrease the intensity so I can still get the amount of volume I want to get in without having to, lead to injuring myself or whatever the case may be. And it's very important that we do that because our bodies are going to tell us what's wrong most of the time. So we just have to be able to learn what to listen to, or how to listen to it without just going about like, oh, I'm just not going to train. I have a little slight tweak in my shoulder, I'm not going to train at all, whatever the case may be. Another thing is your mobility. So some movements, especially with calisthenics, maybe even weight training, right? Your mobility will be challenged, and it's important that you don't go with like a variation, at least with, in terms of calisthenics, right? If you're just training with your body weight, you don't go with a variation that will cause way too much pain on your joints that can't even get to certain positions yet. For some people, doing like dips are like way too hard for them, because it's like, their shoulder has never had to move in that range of motion before, and it causes like, a bunch of like just shoulder and rotator cuff problems, right, for them, because they've never really done that type of movement, right? Even stuff like chin-ups, or just pull-ups from a dead hang, right? Some people can't dead hang because they don't have the shoulder mobility and the lat mobility to get their hands completely over their head without having to like tilt upwards. So if you have those mobility issues, then you're definitely, that's definitely going to be it's definitely just going to lead to injury, right? It's like something's going to happen if you don't have good mobility. So it's very important to practice mobility and to do certain exercises that help you become more mobile. An example would be me doing the wide pike push-ups, where I had my elbows flaring out. At first, it was a little tight on my shoulders, and then over time, as I kept doing them, my shoulders were able to just get right into the movement almost without me having to warm up, right? And my shoulders became a lot more mobile. And not only did they become mobile, but they became strong in that position, which is kind of like what you would refer to as bulletproofing. So not only are you going to be doing exercises, especially strength training exercises, that will build muscle and build strength in that range of motion, but it would also build your mobility. And when you have strength in that very disadvantageous position, it will allow you to, be injury free, at least in that area or in that range of motion. If you look at like these people who are like very flexible or even contortionists, they don't really get injured that much because their bodies can bend and twist in so many different ways. Now, I'm not saying you have to be like, become a human pretzel or something like that, but it's important just to practice mobility and stretching and making sure that we like basically open up our bodies, right? And when we open up our bodies, they're able to do almost anything without being tight, right? It's like you can have muscle, you can train for muscle, have these big muscles and everything like that, but it's like, what's the point if you can't even like touch your toes or whatever the case may be? In terms of like injury, that's all I have to say. I've never really experienced too many injuries whilst training. Hopefully, I don't hopefully I don't get any severe injuries. I've come close to some injuries, but I've never hit one actually. But yeah. Here, just to go over this exercise here, I'm doing like just body weight RDLs. I wanted to find a way of doing like hamstring training without using any weights or any equipment. And I couldn't particularly lay myself on the ground to do like hip thrusts. So I just did these like body weight RDLs just to see like what's gonna happen. I felt my lower back. I did feel my glutes, but it's not like it was like the most intense feeling. I felt my hamstrings a bit, but that's because I was stretching them. But like after I had finished like doing this, I did 100 of them. I definitely did feel my lower back. But it kind of felt nice. It was like I was just stretching, and I was just getting blood flowing to the area. But yeah, that's about it. Guys, stay injury free. Don't push yourself too hard to a point to where it's like you're not listening to what your body's trying to tell you. If your body's trying to tell you, hey, stop, I'm gonna blow out, I'm gonna take you to Snap City, and then listen, of course, right? I mean, it's very fun and very intriguing just to go all out and just to go crazy, but we have to listen to what our bodies are telling us, because otherwise, we'd be disregarding it, and whilst we're trying to improve it. That's about all I have to say. I'm just gonna let this play out. See you guys in the next video. I have my programs down below in the description and in the pinned comment, so check those out. See you guys in the next video. Peace out.